Everyone, I am Shaira and I am here to discuss the next chapter, which is all about the management challenges for religion based attraction by Mira Shackley. So, in this chapter, it aims to illustrate the diversity of religious based attraction. Second, it identifies major management trends and challenges. Third, it distinguishes religious from secular visitor attractions. And lastly, it considers visitor motivations. So, do you have any idea what is a religion based attraction? What are your own observations with the given pictures? Religion based visitor attraction form an immensely diverse assemblage which varies in scale, location, visitor, motivation, and management style. But it also includes commercial theme parks with different religious motives. In today's chapter, it focuses more on several operation management issues, especially significant at religious sites, which have become a visitor attraction as well, and introduce the recent phenomena of commercial managed visitor attraction based on religious themes. The subject is currently attracting a great deal of academic interest, which focuses on pilgrimage and spiritual journey that includes a consideration of a site management issues experienced at the end of such journey. An example of which is the Haifas Baha'i Garden in Israel. It attracts both pilgrims and secular visitors with different motives. To widen your knowledge about this chapter, I would like to introduce to you the following reporters to help us introduce and understand management challenges for religious-based attraction. First reporter would be Sam, who would discuss about classifying religious-based attraction, to be followed by Joni, which talks about the managing of religious-based attraction, and lastly for Path, that will discuss about seasonality and visitor flow.
Hello, my name is Sam, and for this part of the lesson, I will discuss on classifying religious tourist attractions. The selection of religion-based attractions in the world is immense. According to Boris Vukonich, the question on classifying them could be addressed in any number of ways. For instance, they could be divided by religious practice, the degree, the use of the site, or the balance between the adoring community and the number of tourists. They can also be classified either by forms of management, such as sacred or secular, public or private sector, or by scale, which can vary from small isolated shrine to an entire city, like Jerusalem. A city like Jerusalem or tiny nations such as the Vatican or tens of square miles of cultural landscape. The social, physical, and economic influence of religious sites, which are important tourist attractions, has recently gained some international attention. Religious sites may be approximately divided into the basis of number of tourist attractions on the premises each gets, as the complexity of the maintaining religious site is directly proportional to the number of people visiting it in the length of time or where the visitors stay. It was also possible to create a typology of travelers, perhaps on the basis of the distance traveled, which could be a pilgrimage of several hundred miles of a ride that just around the corner from their homes. Religion-based visitor attractions can be either the following. First, the components of natural environment such as sacred mountains, lakes, groves, and islands. Another one is the human-made building structures and sites originally designed for religious purposes, which may now also be attracting tourists. And last but definitely not the least, of course, we have the human-made buildings with a religious theme designed only to attract tourists. Some pages inevitably incorporate elements of all three types. A further category may also be included of special activities of religious significance that take place at non-religious sites. While the concept of a religious-based attraction for many people is associated with constructed heritage, however, this is not the true case because many cultural landscapes include holy sites, elements of constructed heritage, and the component parts of a local religious tourism industry, such as the Uluru in Australia, the Sagarmatha in Himalayas. We also have the Tian Shan Mountains in China. According also to Stephen Shackley, Another example of these kind of sites is the monastery of Saint Catherine in Mount Sinai in Egypt. This can also be a subject of an entire sacred landscape, revered by followers of various worship traditions and often visited by casual tourists. Constructed religious heritage can also consist of an entire city, such as Jerusalem, Amritsar, Varanasi, or Assisi. Aside from notable heritage buildings such as cathedrals, shrines, temples, or mosques, it is also possible to expand the definition of religious-based attractions to include modern age sites such as the Glastonbury in England. There is also a complicated and divisive group of secular sites associated with incidents that have become sacred or include certain battlefield and Holocaust sites and localities associated with socially traumatic or political important events, such as the trade in slavery in Western Africa. A new category of purpose-built religious tourism attraction has also been generated by developments in recent years, which to some degree constitutes a product of the religion it purports to support. Instead of being on a traditional holy site, these new attractions were built to construct a religious-themed visitor setting, but without any truly sacred elements in certain cases. The motivations for such ventures are obviously economic, but most argue that they are driven by education. A good example is the Nazareth village, where a village of the first century is being recreated near the alleged place of the childhood of Jesus. The goal is to allow visitors to experience what life in that time would have been like. But the project moves from museum to theme park with items such as the Parable Walk, where visitors can speak with costume volunteers acting in character. The project led to a disappointment from foreign tourists who expected to witness a simple but rural life. In New Orlando, Florida, a more extreme instance of this genre has now been constructed. On a 15-acre near Universal Studios, the Holy Land Experience, created by Zion's Hope, a non-denominational Christian ministry, opened this park and attempted to recreate Jerusalem, down to the camel prints in cement, the Goliath burgers, and Middle Eastern minstrels. The park has faced a lot of complaints though, from local Jewish leaders and fell foul of tax inspectors, who found it to be an amusement park and thus liable for property tax, rather than, as the developers say, a religious and educational body. This fraud does not only involve Christianity, but also other religions. An example would be a significant Buddhist project, including massive Maitreya project near the birthplace of Buddha, which is in northern India, as well as the largest Buddhist temple outside Asia, which opened in 2003 on the outskirts of Denver. As a result of the 14 years of work and voluntary contributions of approximately $2.7 million. Religious ties have always been commercial. All major religious traditions is an integral part of the sale of souvenirs. In order to draw a new group of tourists, it is just a small step from creating business opportunities to take advantage of visitors to religious sites, to create a one whole ecosystem. But this is a new trend. Holy sites are by far the majority of the religious tourism attractions in the world. And that is all for my topic. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi, I'm Johnny, and today I will be talking about managing religion based attractions. Religion based attractions are becoming a trend these days. The core product in such sites is intangible and subjective. Visitors get to enjoy the vibe, atmosphere, and experience. In these days, visitor attraction managers are trying to control and optimize visitor numbers while minimizing adverse impacts at the same time. Many religious sites generate no revenue from visitors, and if they do, they cannot generate sufficient profit to cover their operating expenses. Although religion based attractions generate a lot of money for associated private sector operators, they still have limited capacity to generate revenue from visitors unless they are purposely built for commercial reasons. Religious sites are usually connected by ties of public and private sector interests, which can vary from the volunteers directly involved in their daily operations. There will be national, regional, local governmental organizations, non governmental organizations, charities, pressure groups, and among others. These groups represent the interests of the locals, religious establishments, planners at regional and national levels, tourism, resource managements, and a host of others. Comparing this sector with any other sector in the service sectors, such sites lack integrated management. The effectiveness of the management and marketing of a religious site is related to the type and size of a religious tradition represented. Most religious sites have hierarchical, clerically dominated management structures which may have functioned the same way for years. Such structures are often unaffected by modern management trends, and some of such sites seem not to be managed at all. It would seem like they exist in a management vacuum where things happen by custom. Others, but very few, are competent professional organizations with proper accounting systems and business plans. Unless if you belong to the few, its managers might identify themselves as the primary facilitators or custodians of the site. Only built heritage is usually managed, and the site manager is almost always starved of resources. The operations are almost always grossly undercapitalized. Managers of religious sites are usually religious leaders to whom concepts such as project development and strategic planning may be foreign. This might be good in terms of spiritual, but when this becomes an attraction wherein they need to cope with a lot of visitors, then operations management is no longer a luxury, but it becomes essential. Site managers need to preserve the site, and the preservation and installation of visitor facilities becomes expensive. Visiting the site requires an emotive experience, thus, it also requires money to be able to preserve the spiritual quality referred to as spirit of the place. Religious sites are not primarily commercial operations, yet they are functioning in a commercial world where customers have become more demanding. And this will always be a challenge for these sites. And that is all for my topic. Thank you so much for listening.
Path, and today we will be discussing on seasonality and flow of visitors. So there are very few religious sites that take active steps to restrict overall visitor numbers. But also there are many popular sites that have problems in controlling arrivals of visitors. Now, oftentimes, visitor access to a religious site is controlled by the different type of transportation that is required to reach the destination. Now, the easiest access system to control our inevitability to islands and the most difficult area at complex urban sites. This is the pilgrimage destination, island of Iona, for example, in Scotland, is by ferry and markedly seasonal. So in this sense, we can already identify how it is hard to visit the pilgrimage site in the island of Iona in Scotland because the factor that it only markedly seasonal and the only mode of transportation is ferry. 50 times more visitors use the ferry in August than in January. So yet the ferry size and operating costs remain roughly the same. So during July and August, there are a large number of visitors, cause congestions around Iona Abbey, and the ferry landing with the rest of the islands that is largely deserted. Now, one management strategy under consideration is a combination of better signage and better information, which might disseminate visitors more widely throughout the island. Because as you go to a destinations, religious destinations such as the pilgrimage in the island of Iona in Scotland, especially during those, since it is markedly seasonal, the congestions are there. The congestions is present, and a lot of tourists might not be able to enjoy it. So, many sites, especially in India also, are suffering under the weight of increased visitor numbers within a infrastructure which is unable to cope giving cause for concern about the heavy level of environmental impact. Now, we all know that visitor flows can also be controlled. It can also be controlled in different various ways. So the flow of visitors within a religious sites can be manipulated, can be controlled in different ways, in various ways, such as those: first, the access to the entire site may be restricted by the utilization of some kind of pay perimeter. So in this case, it will control the flow of visitor, because not everyone can access the destination. So it simply means that if you are the visitor and you want to access a destination, you want to visit the destination, you have to pay a certain amount. And basically that certain amount would cover for the improvement of the area. Now another factor is the other visitor flow management methods include queue control. So in that case, there should be a person who is in charge to take over and look over for the limited person that could visit a certain island. So in that case, if it is numbered, then basically it would control the flow of visitors that can help reduce the congestion that might occur from time to time. Now, access to and around religious sites can therefore be physically limited and controlled, but it can also be socially limited by policies that includes implementations of booking and queuing systems, which may or may not be associated with various type of charges. So that is what I mentioned earlier, that you can control the flow of visitor by providing a person that's responsible for queuing, and also by asking for pay perimeter. Now, at this juncture, let us look into a case study at the Shrine of Our Lady of Knock in Ireland. So Knock was a small, obscure bogside village in County Mayo, where on the 21st of August in the year 1879, a vision of our Lord, of Our Lady accompanied by Saint Joseph and Saint John appeared, that is surrounded by a brilliant light. Now, the apparition lasted for about 2 hours and had 20 witnesses, with the light visible for miles around. Validated by a commission of inquiry, it generated a great wave of religious enthusiasm in Ireland and steady growth in visitor numbers. So it's basically, as we can observe, brought by that apparition that happened in the year 1879, it magnifies a lot of tourists to visit Ireland. Tourism to Knock is seasonal, with little open outside the main tourism season, from May to October. So religious visitors comes mainly as the trippers motivated to see the apparition that happened. Now in that case, other people wish to share in the sanctity of the holy place, while some other tourists that wants to engage in religious sites and visit wish to pray for healing. Others use a visit as a focus for family, community, life, and some simple focus. Now in that case, the apparition had brought in contribution to both the economy of Ireland. But another thing of that is that as the way it attracts tourists and guests, it also creates a place to be congested from time to time without even knowing. Now, this case study illustrates that the visitor services required at Knock are much the same as those as any other religious tourism attraction that I have mentioned earlier, from Scotland in India, that is being dominated by transport, parking, information, catering, accommodation, and merchandising. Now, most of the religious infrastructure that is included within the shrine grounds, such as those churches, basilicas, confessionals, shrines office, some convents, and monasteries, is provided and managed directly by the religious authorities which manage the shrine. So The facilities inside the shrine grounds are limited in number and always greatly exceeded by the number of private sector firms operating outside and around the shrine to cater to the needs of visitors. So in this case, Ireland, the pilgrimage in Ireland, has regulated the flow of visitors because they were able to adapt, they were able to insert the pay parameter in queuing control. So in that case, you could not say that the pilgrimage destination in Ireland is congested because the facilities inside the shrines and grounds are limited in number. In always they make sure that as a visitor visit the pilgrimage destination, they were able to appreciate it, they were able to enjoy the experience because that is what is the best when you are traveling, especially to religious sites. Now, moving forward, tourism to Knock is changing from being primarily domestic to being more mixed. So, although primarily is a religious visitor attraction, tourism to Knock is driving the development of infrastructure in Western Ireland, but the impetus is coming not from the Catholic Church, but from the private sector invested in nearby circular urban destinations, including Galway and Westport. Guests attracted to that destination in Ireland, it gained economic value. Economic value in terms that it benefits both not just the not just the domestic community, but also the private sector because they were able to establish accommodation, facilities, food and beverage. So in that case, they were able to maintain the pilgrimage destination of Ireland to be not congested. At the same time, they were earning.
Chapter highlights 3 significant subjects regarding the religion-based attraction. For the first topic, it is all about classifying religious-based attraction. It focuses to categorize and to determine if that particular destination could be a religious tourist site in the community. It is also for us to know if that site is authentic or not. For the second topic, which is managing religious-based attraction, it is about what to expect and how to survive in this kind of industry. Religion-based attractions are not primarily for commercial operations, yet it has to thrive in a competitive industry, and this will always be a challenge for these sites. Lastly, for the last section, it describes and further elucidates as to how arrival of visitors can be controlled. One of the most interesting part of pilgrimage destination, which is also known as religious attraction, is that it attracts a lot of tourists. And from time to time, the number of tourists increases. But the fact that those religious site has lost its main purpose, which is worshipping, religious pilgrimage destinations becomes a destination for curiosity, which mainly extract the sole purpose of solemnity destination. Nowadays, religious sites are attractions that focuses more on the aspect of beauty, in which a lot of people were looking for. Also, they visit those sites because of curiosity that became a driving factor which tourists easily gets magnified to those areas. I guess that would be all for this chapter. Once again, I am Shaira. Thank you and have a great day.